Hey YouTube. So as you know, I read every comment, post, email that I get. Sometimes I don't always get to reply or can only say a few words or just hit the like button. But other times I'll get an email. It may have questions in it and I'll sit there and think about a question that I get for more than 2 months thinking about, okay, how can I make this into a video? Because I think that this is something that has a lot sort of going on underneath it that I can speak to and turn into its own video topic. And so the question was, did I ever think of myself in terms of percentages? And the example that she gave me when she asked the question is, I think of myself as 100% female 20% of the time. And then she also went on to ask if I thought that that would change at any point in the future, and kind of what I thought about the fact that her therapist said that it appeared that male to female patients did this more than female to male patients. And so it's like a three-part question, kind of a lot of sort of stuff going on underneath there. And the short answer is that no, I never thought of myself in terms of percentages. And I think that that's a pretty complicated way to describe yourself. I think it's also kind of a confusing way to describe yourself because what are you really measuring? What does 100% female mean compared to, say, 80 or 90% female? I don't really understand how you can make those distinctions or measure what is or isn't female without really buying into gender norms or stereotypes. And then I'm also a little bit confused as to what 20% of the time means. Is that literally you spend 20% of your time, so 20% of a week, a month, the year, whatever, expressing or feeling femaleness? Or is this just something like a stalling tactic? So maybe it's just a way for you to say, hey, I will transition if and when I get to X% of the time feeling female. Which leads me into the second part of her question, which is that will or would this change? And I think that the answer is yes. Because as you approach transition, I can very easily see you starting to feel more female more of the time and feeling like you need to act on that. Or maybe you will stop sort of identifying with this type of measurement scale in your identity altogether because you'll come to identify as gender fluid and say that, you know what, the math doesn't really matter. Sometimes I feel like I need to express femaleness. Sometimes I feel like I need to express masculinity. Or maybe you'll come to reject the binary altogether and identify as, non-binary or genderqueer. And I think that the point is you will sort of change how you identify as you become more comfortable with yourself. And that kind of gets into, I think, the last part of the question where, trans men, according to her therapist, don't seem to feel this way as often as trans women do. And I think that's, obviously anecdotal evidence, not scientific whatsoever. But even if we assume that that's reasonably accurate or true or whatever, it sort of reinforces the idea that society is extremely misogynistic. It values men more than women, at least right now and historically. And as a result, there is quite a bit more social cost to transitioning from male to female, I think, than from transitioning from female to male. That's not to say that there aren't costs going either direction, but I think that because society values masculinity more than femininity, that, maybe trans men don't need to kind of weigh the pros and cons or come up with sort of a algorithm or a formula or an equation, whatever, to determine if and when they should transition or anything like that. And I think it was very telling that the next question she asked was, when do you know it's time to pull the trigger on transition? And, like, when you're comfortable with it, when you're ready to do it, is the short answer, because there is no right way to be trans. There is no right time to transition. Like, maybe you take hormones for a little bit, decide that's enough for you. Or maybe you need to go full time and pursue surgeries. Maybe you just identify differently, or maybe you just determine that androgyny is more for you. Like, trans means a lot of things. Transsexual means something a little bit more specific, but there is no right way to be trans. There is no right way to transition, and ultimately it's about being comfortable with yourself, and doing whatever you need to do in order to get there. And for some people, that will be very different. And that's kind of, I guess, the long, rambling answer to that question.